George Clooney and Brad Pitt's new movie, Wolves, is on Apple TV Plus September 27th.
That's where I want you to be now.
So if you want to see George Clooney and Brad Pitt, go to Apple TV Plus.
You got to start the story there.
Or if you want to see Brad Pitt and George Clooney, go to Apple TV Plus.
I am enjoying the show.
And if you want to see their new movie, Wolves,
You can't do it, I'm going to help you out. I can do it, so do it.
definitely go to Apple TV Plus.
Admit it, it's cool. Okay, fine, it was very cool.
Wolves, streaming September 27th on Apple TV Plus. Rated R.
This episode is brought to you by Microsoft Azure. Turn your ideas into reality with an Azure free account. Get everything you need to develop apps across cloud and hybrid environments, scale workloads, create cloud-connected mobile experiences, and so much more. Discover what you can create with popular services free for 12 months. Learn more at azure.com. That's AZURE.com. And sign up for a free account to start building in the cloud today.
Thanks for choosing this free Anfield Index podcast. If you'd prefer to listen to this or any of our other shows without adverts, then now's the time to check out Anfield Index Pro. With AEye Pro, you can supercharge your entire listening experience. You'll not only get all of our podcasts without the ads, but you'll have them far faster with our Quick Publish feature available exclusively for subscribers. AEye Pro also puts you in the heart of our sound studio, with an option to listen to many of our shows live and interact with the podcasters in real time as the shows are recording. Upgrading couldn't be easier. AEye Pro is available on all popular podcast platforms. Just head on over to AnfieldIndexPro.com and get started today.
Hello, welcome to AEye Scouted on Anfield Index Pro. I'm Dave Hendrick, joined as always by Mr. Karl. How are you, sir?
Depleted.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think after the shambolic performance at the weekend, it's absolutely fair to feel that way. But Liverpool must bounce back very quickly, Karl, because tomorrow night they take on AC Milan in the Champions League at the San Siro Stadium. Obviously, Liverpool went there a couple of years ago and beat Milan with what was basically a third-string team with the likes of Nat Phillips starting. This promises to be a bit of a tougher test, though, given it's the first game. Milan are going to be well up for it. But they are already under a little bit of pressure. The season hasn't started magnificently for them. They obviously decided in the summer to move on from Stefano Pioli. And after much discussion over who the new manager would be, they landed on Paulo Fonseca, who had previously been at Lille. Before that, he'd been with Roma, Shakhtar, Braga, Pacos de Ferreira, and Porto, among others. Not a manager from the top shelf, I would suggest. A little bit of an underwhelming hire. And certainly the start to the season has been a little bit underwhelming. Milan have played 4 games in Serie A, a 2-2 draw at home to Torino, where they needed 2 very late goals to salvage that. Then they lost 2-1 away to Parma. They drew 2-2 with Lazio. But at the weekend, they did beat Venezia 4-0 and were 4 up after half an hour and had that one put to bed. They have us, and then they have Inter at the weekend. So questions on whether they go full strength in this one or maybe rest 1 or 2, but thus far, not the best of starts for them.
No, not really. I think this actually probably continues a bit of a trend in terms of managerial signings for them. I mean, Pioli was fairly underwhelming, to be honest, when they actually hired him. Like, he was coming off the back of, I think he'd done okay at Fiorentina, but like rubbish at Inter. They'd sacked him really quickly. He hadn't been amazing at Lazio. So he'd been around, but he wasn't, I don't think he was like a big name coach or anything like that when they got him to join. On the whole, I think I've only seen one of Milan's games so far this season. That was at the weekend, which was, should we say, not a test. Venezia have only taken 1 point so far. So they looked fine, like decent build-up play, but it was like against not a very good side. Like I say, quite open, a lot of spaces between them. They weren't particularly competitive and the game was over and done with inside first half hour, like you say. I think in principle, the players that they've got in place are pretty much a step up, I would say, if they all click and if they're all used in a way which befits the sort of 4-3-3 system, like Leao and Pulisic, either side of Tammy Abraham. In theory, that's pretty good. Like they mesh well. They should match up quite nicely with each other. You've got a bit of creativity with Pulisic. Leao obviously is a great talent if he can just add the game-to-game consistency. And even in midfield, I know Loftus-Cheek's never quite hit the heights, but I think Yusuf Fofana is a decent add. Not sure I'd want him as the sole six all the time when he could be a bit of a rampaging ball winner and be a bit better for them. But Reinder's in there as well. They signed Morata over the summer and they've got a whole host of younger players as well. So it's a decent setup in principle.
It is. Just as for context, Guy points out, Inter are playing City in the week, so obviously tough game for them as well. Milan in the summer, they signed Alex Jimenez, who I think had been there on loan, and that became a permanent deal through an obligation to buy. They signed Alvaro Morata off the back of his performances at the Euros, where he obviously captained Spain. They got him at a really good price, in fairness. I mean, I'm not a huge fan, but for 11 million, you can't really argue with getting a player of Alvaro Morata's undeniable qualities. Srđan Pavlović, I do really like as a signing. I think 16 million is good value. Emerson Royal, I'm not massively keen on, but I think he's solid, and I think he'll be fine for them. Yusuf Fofana for 18 million. Like you, I mean, he's grand. He's a good box-to-box midfielder, but he's not a six, and if they're going to try and play him there consistently, I think that will lead to problems. And then they loan in Tammy Abraham. When you start to look at the squad, it is a talented group of players. There's no doubt about it. Like goalkeepers, they've got Mike Maignan, who's one of the best in the world. Sportiello's a solid backup. And they've got young Noah Rivere, the young French goalkeeper, who they're quite high on. Maignan obviously is the clear starter, but that's a really good starter to have. Defensively, Calabria, I'm not a huge fan of. The fact that he's Milan captain kind of speaks to where Milan are. But Theo Hernandez is one of the best left backs in the world. Fikayo Tomori, Malik Thiaw, Srđan Pavlović, and Matteo Gabbia is a really good crop of centre-backs. That's 4 really good centre-backs they've got there. So at the weekend, it was Gabbia and Pavlović. We'll see what happens for the game against us. They obviously got Emerson Royal, Alex Jimenez, Alessandro Florenzi, because for some reason you need to have 4 right backs in your squad, and then Taricino, who is a decent backup left back that they signed in January, I think, from Hellas Verona. So that's a really good group of defenders. Overall, I think it's a very good group. The midfield is a little bit light. You've got Benacer, he's out injured though. Ruben Loftus-Cheek, like you said, he's always sort of flattered to deceive. Reinders is decent, but not great. Saroli's a young player that they're quite high on. Yunus Musa, I do very much like, but he's very raw still and still doesn't really have a position. And then Fofana comes in. And then in attack, you've got Alvaro Morata, Luka Jovic, Rafael Leao, Christian Pulisic, Noah Okafor, Samuel Chukwueze, and Tammy Abraham. That is a very, very talented group of attackers. Now, there's some in there that have obviously flattered to deceive across the years, like Jovic, Chukwueze, Okafor, Pulisic. They've been in situations where it hasn't necessarily brought the best out of them. But if the manager can get the talent out of these players, that's a really good group of forward players. So it is a good squad. It's missing a couple of bits and pieces, but they're definitely a team we have to take seriously on Tuesday night.
We do. I mean, there are many questions, within that. How seriously do we have to take it? Like, is this one of our toughest few fixtures? And in an 8-game phase, for want of a better word, how seriously do you need to take all of them, especially the away games? Is it going to make that much difference for Liverpool if we finish top 8 or 20th? There's a lot about this Champions League. We can discuss the Champions League itself, I suppose, in a minute. But I'm not 100% convinced at this point that we must take it massively seriously every single game. Like, there have been quite a few computer models, obviously. UEFA did their own forecasts and so on and so forth. And if the suggestion is like, you can lose 4 and still get a playoff spot, I'm not sure I'm going to be placing quite as much emphasis on finishing in the top 8. I know you'd save 2 qualifying matches, but realistically speaking, I don't expect Liverpool to be in the bottom half of the playoff matches, and therefore, who are you going to realistically be facing? Like Shakhtar, PSV, Dinamo Zagreb, or Club Brugge, maybe, if they ever could run something like that. It's not going to be, if you're going to pick 15 out of there who are not going to be facing you, I'm not sure that going hell for leather and not rotating in Europe as opposed to at the weekend is going to be, more of a cost than playing those extra 2 fixtures in February.
Yeah, I do agree. I think you also have to take a look at who you're playing in the league before and after. So, for example, we have Milan on Tuesday night. We played Bournemouth on Saturday. Bournemouth is probably the game we can maybe make 1 or 2 changes for there. But then we play Chelsea, Leipzig, and Arsenal. Leipzig is clearly the game where you take some players out. Even though it's away, I think you take the risk on that one. And if you lose, you lose. But like you say, worst case scenario, you're playing 2 extra games in February. It's not the end of the world by any stretch. We played Girona after we play Everton. We've got Fulham the following weekend. That's another one where maybe you can rest some players. The same thing with, when we play Leverkusen. That's in between Brighton and Villa. I'd be happier to risk a draw at home to Leverkusen than to drop points against Brighton or Villa. So I do think it'll just depend on who we're playing and when. But like you, I think it's because of the nature of this, because of the fact that so many teams are going to qualify out of this ridiculous league phase thing that they've decided to do, where you've got an unnatural amount of teams in this, like 36 teams. And there's a lot of dross in this as well. Like, to go alphabetically through it, Arsenal, Villa, Atalanta, Atletico Madrid, Barcelona, Bayern Leverkusen, Bayern Munich, Benfica, Bologna, Borussia Dortmund, Brest, Celtic, Club Brugge, Dinamo Zagreb, Feyenoord, Girona, Inter Milan, Juventus, Lille, Liverpool, Manchester City, Milan, Monaco, Paris Saint-Germain, PSV, RB Leipzig, Real Madrid, Red Bull Salzburg, Red Star Belgrade, Shakhtar Donetsk, Slovan Bratislava, Sparta Prague, Sporting, Sturm Graz, Stuttgart, and Young Boys. Like, there's absolutely no way that even if this goes badly for us, there's not 15 to 20 teams there that we finish above. So worst case scenario is we are an unseeded team in the knockout phase and we play away in the second leg or whatever. But I'm not massively concerned about any of this. Like, if we finish in the top 16, I'm happy. If we finish in the top 8, great. If we finish in the top 16, I'm happy enough.
The only, not negative or problem or anything like that, but the thing to note, I suppose, is if you're saying, win your home games and you're basically through, Liverpool's 2 hardest matches are both at home this time around. That's just how it's worked out, obviously, with Leverkusen and Real Madrid. That's as an initial look, and based on what teams did last year, obviously, those are the 2 you would say were the most difficult opponents. So you can't maybe necessarily say, we will win all 4 of our home games, because you might not, especially if we play like we did at the weekend against Nottingham Forest, obviously. But home to Lille, away to PSV, you would imagine if Liverpool had to, they would still win those last two matches.
Yeah.
So again, there's just so many games. Like, one of the problems of the old Champions League group was that even if one of the teams you've mentioned, the Sturm Graz, for example, beat you, it wasn't likely that over 6 matches they would accumulate enough points to knock you out. And like, over 8 now, it's just even less likely, I think.
Yeah, without question. Without question. Obviously, because of the way the draw was weighted, these teams, like your Sturm Graz, like even if they were to, let's just say they beat Leipzig in their first home game, but then they've still got to play Dortmund, Atalanta, Sporting, Lille, Girona, all teams that could very easily beat them. So it just makes it very hard for any of these teams to get enough points to get through. And like you said, like our 2 hardest games are certainly at home, Real Madrid and Bayer Leverkusen. But the other 2 home games, Lille and Bologna, are both very, very winnable. Bologna in particular, because they got multiple key players left in the summer, and obviously the manager left as well. Our pot 3 and 4 away opponents are PSV and Girona. Again, they're teams we should be going and beating, especially Girona, who got decimated in the summer. Now, I think they've had a decent enough summer in terms of rebuilding, but they clearly don't look anything like the same team. And again, like even the pot 1 and pot 2 aways, Leipzig and Milan, like they're places we should be able to go and get results. So you said earlier about, win 4, lose 4. You'd sort of be looking at it and thinking, realistically, if we were to win 4, draw 3, which would be, say, draw Leverkusen at home, we should win all our away games. Like, these are not teams that are anywhere near as good as us. Or even if we were to, let's say, beat Milan, let's say we beat Lille, beat PSV, beat Bologna, beat Girona, draw with Milan and Leipzig away, draw with Leverkusen at home, and let's say Real beat us. Like, that's not a brilliant set of results, but it's more than enough to see us sail through.
I've got Dan Morgan here on the pod. Say hi, Dan.
Hey, how's it going today?
It's going good, man. Tell us who you are and what you do.
I'm Dan Morgan. I'm an attorney and a managing partner at Morgan & Morgan, which is America's largest injury law firm.
That's pretty awesome. Why do you guys think you win so many cases?
The insurance companies and other companies that we go against know that we're going to take it to the end, that we believe in the case. So we fight for every dollar, and we're not afraid to go that extra mile for our clients.
Are insurance companies actually afraid of you guys?
We don't bluff. We take it to trial, and we are not strangers of getting very, very, very large verdicts.
Awesome. So how does someone get in contact with Morgan & Morgan? What would I do if I got into an accident?
Probably the easiest way is dialing pound law. That's pound 529 from your cell phone. And our call center is always waiting to take your call. 24/7, 365.
Wow. Dan Morgan from Morgan & Morgan, America's largest injury law firm. Thanks for coming by the show.
Thanks for having me. Visit forthepeople.com for an office near you.
With that in mind, and as you said before, given the fixtures which are around it immediately now, would you change after the weekend, after the performance of the weekend, after the players who came on and what they did or didn't do in most cases? Would you make changes, or would you say, get it back on track?
I'd say get it back on track. I'd be rolling out the same 11 and telling them to figure themselves out, because that performance was just unacceptable. And it was across the board. Like, we spoke on Raw, we highlighted the couple of players that were decent, were good, but it was a very small group. The vast majority were somewhere between crap and just absolutely abysmal. And when that happens, I think you just stick with what you have. I don't think, because you can't change everybody. Like, if we were going to drop players based on that performance, you're dropping Robertson, Gravenberch, McAllister, Szoboszlai, Salah, Jota, Diaz, you're having to at least have a think about dropping Trent. And the only three that are absolutely certain to be in the team are Ali, Ibu, and Virgil. So you can't do that. And then you can't really just single out one or two. Like, you could single out Robbo, but then what about Mo and what about Szoboszlai? They were every bit as bad as him. You can't single out Szoboszlai because, again, the other two were every bit as bad. You can't single out Diaz because Jota was just as bad, Gravenberch was just as bad, and McAllister was just as bad. So
you could make a change in each line. We've done this before.
You could. I wouldn't, though. Not for this one. I changed them for Bournemouth the weekend, and I'd rest a couple for Bournemouth. Not rest, but rotate.
Enough. I just wonder if it's not risky exactly, but obviously then you've got the League Cup the following midweek. I would like a few players who are going to play in the League Cup to have already played football this season. And it's, if you don't change any against Milan, you're kind of getting very, very close to them. Same team, 6 games in a row, and then a new one for the 7th.
Yeah, I mean, I think you could. I think there's probably a real argument to be made that the one change you would make in this game before all others would be to just take Alexis out, because he isn't fit. Like, it's very clear he went into that Forest game not near 100%. So even though he did not do well when he came on, I would say Curtis Jones in for Alexis would be a change that would make sense for Milan. And then against Bournemouth, maybe you keep Jones in to give Alexis a little bit more time. You bring in Quansah. Maybe you bring in Darwin. And maybe you bring in Cody. So you make 1 for this game, 3 for the next. And yeah, admittedly, you'll play West Ham then with a lot of players that haven't played. But at the same time, Bradley has played a lot. He's played in every game, so you're bringing him in. Quansah will have played. Costas, I think, has come on in every game as well. I'm not sure who the other centre-back. I assume Joe Gomez, but it's weird that Joe hasn't played. So yeah, Joe would come in. So you'd go Bradley, Quansah, Joe, Costas. Joe would be the only one really coming in cold.
I don't need a VPN. I've got nothing to hide. Ha. This is what I used to tell myself before I hooked up with LibertyShield.com. Not only is my home internet now fully encrypted, but I can now access all the websites I want, whenever I want, and do so from absolutely anywhere. As a Liverpool fan, I love to know I can now watch every match, regardless of whether it's on UK TV or not. My Liberty Shield VPN makes sure nothing is blocked and guarantees me super fast streaming speed throughout that match. You can get connected right now with their software package, which includes a 48-hour no-obligation free trial and instant access to their apps for Apple, Android, Fire TV, PC, Mac and Android TV. Or go a step further like I have and get one of their pre-configured VPN routers. These small but powerful devices allow you to easily connect every device in your home to VPN, making it the perfect solution for smart TVs, Mac boxes and games consoles. Visit LibertyShield.com today and use coupon code AIVPN25 to get 25% off at checkout.
In defence, then in midfield, I think Morton comes in, you keep Jones in, you bring in Endo, and that's your 3-man midfield. Jones, who plays the most advanced role. And then you just change the forward line. Chiesa, Darwin and Gakpo, who will have played against, or it could have been Darwin, it could have been Gakpo and Chiesa that play against Bournemouth. But, you know, you've only got a handful then that are coming in really cold. Endo, Morton and Gomez, plus whichever forward didn't play against Bournemouth.
Yeah, I suppose, again, it's going to depend on performances in these next 2 games as well. Like you say, expect a reaction. we are still in that period where you don't know what you're going to get at the minute, because we haven't been in the situation under this coach, this group, with that dynamic and all the rest of it.
See, this is the thing. Like, we don't have the familiarity with Arla of how he reacts to performances like that. You know, like, that was a shocking performance. Forgetting the result for a second, which is obviously dreadful, the performance was completely unacceptable. Now, what I note is that at Feyenoord, in his first season, they finished third, no back-to-back defeats. Second season, no back-to-back defeats. And then last season, had some back-to-back defeats in the Champions League, but not back-to-back defeats in consecutive games, like when you factor in all competitions. So it does look like he's pretty decent at getting them back up for the next game and kind of shaking that one off. And that'll be the hope, is that he can do that, and it doesn't turn into a thing where, you know, we lose to Milan and then all of a sudden Bournemouth rolls round on Saturday afternoon and everybody's nervous again.
Yeah, you've got to get rid of that very, very quickly. It needs a good reaction. I mean, from the first three games, I would say you would expect that. You would expect an accomplished, quite calm, composed sort of performance where, even though it's away, even though it's Europe, all the rest of it, it kind of lends itself to that style of football, and you more or less dominate a game. Like, Milan are fine. Milan are good at times, but we know that we've got players which are the match and better of them. So I think there's reason to expect, if not proof, that it will happen.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, like, if we're being really honest, they have, I would say, 3 top-class players, like elite-level players. But one of them struggles with consistency. Obviously, that's Rafael Leao. He would start for us, I think. Theo might be the best left-back in the world, given Davies has kind of dropped off in the last year or so. Theo would start for us. And then there's Mike Maignan, who's one of the 3 or 4 or 5 best goalkeepers in the world, but he wouldn't start for us because we have the best goalkeeper in the world. So, man for man, talent for talent, we are a better team than them. I think, based on what I've observed over the years between both coaches, I do think we have the better coach. I think if anyone at Liverpool felt like Arne wasn't the better coach, the other guy would be in our dugout right now, because it was reported that we did meet with him. Thankfully, we did not hire him, but I think if the feeling was that he was a better coach, I think he would be our manager now.
Here's a throwaway question for you, based on the way that it started and based on the fact that you've just said Leao can go sky high or through the floor. Would you take him right now? Straight swap. You lose Diaz for all eternity and everything that he might do.
Yeah, I would. If Milan were willing to swap Leao for Diaz, I would take that for a couple of reasons. I think both of them struggle with consistency, but I think Leao's upper level is higher than Diaz's upper level. I think their lowest level is in and around the same, though I will say Diaz, when he's off form, at least still works like an absolute Trojan. But Leao's also, 2.5 years younger? So I do think that plays into his favour as well. I would. If they were willing to do a straight swap, I would take Rafael Leao. I would happily throw in money, frankly. He wouldn't be my first choice for us in that position, but I do think he is one of the very best in the world in that position when he's on. When he's on form, I think the only one that's head and shoulders clear is Vinicius. I think after that, he's in a group of 2 or 3 that are competing for second place. But he's not consistently in that group because he's not consistent.
I would wonder whether he finds that consistency now, given his age. Like, you expect it, like it happened to Vinicius. Obviously, he's the elite of the elite, so not a direct comparison, but it happened for him much earlier. He learned much earlier what he needed to do. I still see a little bit of Leao not doing that anywhere near enough, like even just in terms of aggression and when to move with the ball, when to find spaces off the ball, that kind of thing. I expected by now at 25 he would be a couple of bits better.
No, I fully agree. Like if we look at it, like Vinicius is a year younger, and yet Vinicius, we were talking about this years ago with Vinicius about the inconsistency in his game. Because obviously he'd arrived over from Brazil for this enormous fee, and the first 3 years he was at Real were not particularly great. But then in 21-22, he just explodes and becomes this phenomenal player. And the last 2 seasons have backed that up. If we look at Rafael Leao, he is at Sporting. There's the whole fallout over the fans getting in. He goes to Lille. He has a really good season with Lille. Milan jump in and get him. And you think, okay, like he's going to be special. The first 2 years with Milan are very, very frustrating. Then he looks like he's taking the leap in 21-22, same season as Vinicius, just a year older. But then the last 2 seasons, he hasn't really improved on that. Like people will say, 22-23, he was great. And he was really good, but he wasn't better than he was in 21-22 when he was so important to them winning the Serie A title. And then last year, I thought he took a slight step backwards. So he hasn't kicked on in the same way that Vinicius has done.
No, Leao at 25 or Feature at 23 now, I think, is a bit of a gap, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah.
Like, I acknowledge that Leao probably has more, should we say, technical ability or just absolutely ridiculous magic from time to time. But Kvicha's level is almost always the same.
Yeah. Yeah, and with Kvicha, defenders always have to be on alert with him because every time he gets the ball, he just carries a threat. Whereas with Leao, I kind of feel like he's more of a moments player. Kvicha's a consistent threat throughout games. And even if things are going badly for him, he'll consistently make himself available for the ball. He's offering a consistent outlet. Whereas Leao will just disappear out of the game. And you'll completely forget that he's playing. But then he'll pop up with like one moment of brilliance. And people will forget the performance. And even if the team loses, but he scores, he tends to get away with a lot of the criticism. Whereas with Kvicha, there's never a game where you look at it and think he didn't have an impact. Even if sometimes it is a negative impact because he just hasn't played well, but he's constantly been involved. Leao doesn't have that. Leao will have bad games where he's just not involved at all.
Kvicha is the much more Diaz style of footballer.
Yeah. And he would be undeniably my pick for us next summer, because I think that left-sided role, when we see a lot of what Diaz is doing with drifting central and at times almost occupying the number 10 space, with Szoboszlai shifting left, like that sort of hybrid type role, I think Kvicha suits to a T. Leao would have been more of a fit in the old Klopp 4-2-3-1, playing with a false 9 and, 2 goal-scoring inside forwards. But the thing is, I think if he was one side, I don't think Mo would be the one for the other side, because like the balance of Mo and Mane and what they offered was incredible. I think Leao, not nearly as good, but I think Leao is more in that Mo goal scorer mode as opposed... Now, what Mo has become now is different to what he was a few years ago. Whereas Mane brought more of an intensity, he brought more in the way of, I think, the off-ball work as well. I don't think Leao offers that. He's a great counter-attacking threat in the same way Mo has been, and he's a great, and he can be a great end product player, but he doesn't impact games in the same way that Mo didn't used to always impact games all over the pitch. Now Mo is doing that. What we're seeing with Mo is ridiculous, like what he's kind of developed himself into over the last 5 years. But I'm thinking those first couple of years when that front three was together, I think Leao is more of a Salah replacement, which means you'd still need a Mane and a Bobby to give it balance. This team is very different to that team, and I think Kvaratskhelia is the one that just fits like a glove.
Hey guys, it's Eddie Gibbs from Anfield Index here. I hope you're enjoying this podcast, and I'm sorry to call time on the show before it ends. In the current climate, it's tougher than ever before to offer podcasts for free. At Anfield Index, we produce over 75 free shows every month, which I'm confident is unparalleled in the LFC sphere. Whilst we'd love to offer everything for free, the production costs now make this impossible. That said, we don't want to follow the model of other channels and lock all of our content behind a paywall. So what we've decided to do is to continue offering every show for free, but cut that offering to 30 minutes on our longer shows. So to get all of our shows in full and enjoy the best of everything we have to offer, we really hope you'll consider supporting the channel and signing up at AnfieldIndexPro.com. For about the price of 1 cup of coffee, you'll get every podcast in full with 0 ads. You'll also get access to our LFC VIP community, where you can enjoy live podcasts, engage with our podcasters, and chat with other Reds in real time. So that website again, AnfieldIndexPro.com. Join today.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.